Right. Thank you to everybody who's joining tonight. My name is Caroline Fraisenet. I am on the board here at DBSA California. I'm delighted to introduce Wendy McNeill, who's our executive director, talking about her story. And she's going to be interviewed by our wonderful Amy, also with DBSA California. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping things. Just make sure to turn your microphone off. We will have a Q&A at the end. We'll turn off recording for that portion just to protect people's personal information and whatnot. And just as a little plug here, we are a donation-based organization. We absolutely welcome you regardless of whether or not you donate, but donations are always appreciated. I'm going to put the link here in the chat. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to Wendy and Amy.
Do you want to put Wendy on spotlight,
Yes, let
Caroline?
me do that here.
Okay, thank you.
All right, there we go.
All right. And can I ask one more question, Caroline? All right, can you keep letting people in
Yes, absolutely.
while
I
we
got you.
start? Okay. All right. To get us started.
All right.
Right. Thank you for the introduction, Caroline. And I am so excited to be here today with my amazing boss, Wendy. And so we're just going to go ahead and get started and welcome everyone. And I hope you enjoy the story, and we'll have plenty of time for questions afterward. All right. So, Wendy, before we jump into your story from the past, can you just paint us a brief picture of what your daily life is like today, aside from all the work
Sure, of
you
course.
do?
I'd love to, but before I get started, it's such a joy to see everyone and some like very old faces that I had no idea were coming today. So I'm just bowled over. I'm a little verklempt even to get started. But yeah, so I live in sunny San Diego. Have done since 1989. Live on a beautiful street, Mississippi Street, in the lovely North Park of sunny San Diego. My door is about a mile from the door of the San Diego Zoo, if that orients people a little bit to our tourist attraction of choice. Let's see, my daily life, and knock on wood, is fairly balanced. What can I say? I always have to knock on wood when you have bipolar and you're talking about the glory of balance. So in any event, been live with my beautiful and cherished husband, Travis Sizer. We met in 2002, married in 2012, and have just been thick as thieves ever since. We own a beautiful cat who's very ornery, named Little Girl, and a very loud parrot named Nicholas. And we just love the simple life here on Mississippi Street. I have wonderful neighbors, including my nearest and dearest neighbor, Larry, who's 98 years old, who I get to see on the daily pretty much. Also on the daily, love to talk to my dearest mother, Lee. We try to keep in touch daily. I also volunteer at the Blind Community Center here. I teach dance. I also identify as a person in the blind community as I'm visually impaired. Um, let's see, we love music here. My husband is a avid music collector. We have about 300 vinyl records, so we listen to a lot of music. Also love listening to my husband tell stories. He's a accomplished storyteller, and I swear to God, he's never short of material. Like, I still learn new things from him every day. It's never dull. Also, I have a beautiful Friday night group. We call ourselves Friday Night Fidelity. So I host a dinner party every Friday night, and they are kind of an offshoot of the DBSA family. So there are five of us, and a couple of them are here tonight, including Amy and Fabulosa, who are here. And eventually, I love hanging out with my neighbors. I like visiting the local donut shop and having Vietnamese iced coffee. I collect greeting cards, and I'll just reference my friend Marion Fragola. I can't stop myself because I became an avid letter writer and worked on my penmanship once my dearest friend Marion moved away, and she started my whole journey with letter writing, correspondence, personal narrative, penmanship, collecting letter openers, that whole thing. I'm very old school, and I'm trying to keep the old ways alive. And basically, in my day-to-day life, I also have the privilege and honor of working with Amy in Lombardi, and have also an in-person DBSA meeting that I started that meets in the park nearby. And that's been a joy. And basically, we're just living large here on Mississippi Street and trying to get the most out of every day that we can.
Awesome. A full life, a full picture. Let's go back to the past, flashback to the past. And I know that you identify as a Gen X Valley girl. Can you tell us what it was like growing up in your
Sure.
Valley?
Well, like, oh my God, I'm totally from the valley and like whatever. And like, oh my God, can you even believe what she's wearing? It's so tacky. I can't even believe it. And like, oh my God. So yeah, I grew up in the valley, which is in Northwest Los Angeles. It's a very large suburb of LA. And the Valley Girls grew famous in the 1980s. It was remarked upon by a singer named Frank Zappa, who did kind of a spoof on the Valley Girl. But basically, what you're talking about is, the LA culture, kind of spoiled and entitled was kind of the vibe that I was in growing up. I was blessed to have a very beautiful, kind of all-American nuclear family. My folks were both white collar professionals. My mom taught special ed, and my father was an engineer in the defense industry. My older brother, Mike, now goes by Ike, was an avid golfer from like age 11, and also dreamt of being a businessman, which is what he achieved in his life. And I went to a like a college prep school called Los Angeles Baptist High School. It's quite evangelical. So yeah, I was brought up in the Episcopal tradition in my own. So I was kind of an outsider in high school because I was a false Christian, according to some people. So yeah, I was just really blessed, though, to grow up in a very kind of nurturing but sheltered environment. So that's just a little bit about where I come from.
Hmm. And how did you end up in San Diego?
I ended up in San Diego in 1989 to go to UCSD. I followed my brother down here. He went to SDSU, which is like the kind of really hyper social party school, and I went to the nerdy school. Neither of us were able to go to UCLA because our dad was just an ardent Trojan fan and alumni of USC. So he said, "Well, you guys can go to UCLA. I just won't pay for it." So we were never able really to go to UCLA. So San Diego just seemed like the destination of choice for our family. So yeah, I've been here since '89, and most San Diegans, once they get here, they never leave. So
Time out, Wendy. We never want to go to UCLA, all right? This is her brother right here, so I want to just clarify that. I got into
Thanks for
USC, but I went to
identifying,
San Diego
right?
State, all right? So I just
Yeah,
want to make sure here.
proud Aztec over there. Yeah, thanks, Ike.
And so, Wendy,
I
how
went to San Diego State too.
Yeah, me
Oh,
too.
thanks,
So
Shannon.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, I love all the family here. We want to hear the whole story though, so I want to move her on to the next topic. How did your bipolar diagnosis come about, Wendy? How did you
Well,
find out that
that's
you
kind of a long, terrible tale, and I'll start kind of early on. So I mentioned I went to a college prep high school, a religious school, and very sheltered, but kind of a college prep environment. And but I would say my depression started in high school quite early. And one of my dearest friends who made it tonight, Marion, she and I were like very close during my junior high years, and then she moved away to Greensboro, North Carolina. And I used to always say I was bereft when Marion left. Like I kind of plummeted into this kind of really hardcore depression that I didn't really like shake off for about a year. I kind of slogged through about the next year. And then in my high school years, the bipolar started to manifest with, I would say, periods of depression and elation. So I had both sides of that bipolar coin. So we have these like kind of massive jolts of energy and creativity, and I would oftentimes like work on projects up in the middle of the night. Like, for example, I was the yearbook editor and I started planning all these grandiose things and like woke my parents up in the middle of the night to tell them all of my fantastic ideas. And at the same time, I started kind of unraveling with some elation. And then I got hit with some severe depression when my yearbook started falling apart. Our photo lab, which of course back in the day you had real photos, the photo lab melted down and I was missing my yearbook deadlines. And I thought that the whole school would hate me when the yearbook didn't come out on time for them to get their yearbook signed. So I was waiting for this, complete ostracism from my high school peers. And then I also started to not pass my physics class, and I thought my my admission to UCSD would be revoked. So it was a double whammy and I stopped functioning. And my father took note because he basically had seen this in himself in years past, and he intervened and he got me a tutor. He also put pressure on the principal to get the yearbook done. All was well. Everything turned out just fine. In the meantime, I was kind of already experiencing some really hardcore symptoms before I even left for college. So that was kind of the nod. But I went off to UCSD like every other girl in my world was expected to do. And I showed up there in 1989 and had the most idyllic freshman year you could ever want. It was basically like the college year of your dreams. And I had plenty of friends and fun, and I excelled in school, and I was just on fire. And then as it turns out, the very last day of my freshman year is when tragedy struck for my family. And I got back from my last final, the last day of my freshman year. All my belongings had been stripped out of my apartment, and I was confused and disoriented. And I saw my mom, and I said, "Well, where's Dad?" It was just, there was something surreal going on. And so my mom and they put me in an elevator and took me down and basically said, "Well, your dad is dead, and he died of suicide yesterday." And they put me into the car and we went back to Los Angeles. And 5 days later, I was doing the eulogy at the church for my dad. And then forward again, about 6 months later, went back to UCSD, studied my sophomore year, got a very high pressure job. And then I tried to cram for all of my finals. So I was staying awake for days on end. And I was very keen to like get an A in my Latin class. So I crammed all day and night. And then when I came home for my final, my mind started to escalate into this manic euphoria and psychosis. Like I started to imagine that I knew more about Einstein than my professor, and that I was in this spiritual place and had all this euphoria. And like, for example, I decided to speed up my fish and accelerate the consciousness of my fish. So I poured coffee in this fish tank, and then I decided to go confront my physics professor. So I went and yelled and screamed at my physics professor and told him that I had made discoveries about Einstein's, theory of relativity. And obviously that didn't go well. So he alerted the authorities at school. And soon enough, I had like 10 people in my apartment ready to get me to UCSD Medical Center, including my mom, who came down from LA, and my brother showed up, and security guard showed up, and boom, I was stuck in the car, and then eventually transported to UCSD Medical Center and strapped down onto a gurney and injected with Haldol, a major injection of antipsychotic medication. And then moments later, what seemed like moments later, I found myself in a seclusion room in 4-point restraints, naked, and full of so much medication that I couldn't say my name aloud. I couldn't even speak. And I thought I was being tortured, which I was. So eventually, that was my diagnosis day. It was my 19th birthday, and they called it a slam dunk that I was bipolar type 1. And that was the advent of my diagnosis and my transition into the system for years on end after that occurred.
And what was the impact? That sounds really traumatic. Like what was the impact of that kind of treatment at the hospital? How did it go?
Well, I think it soured me on treatment in the American health system forever. I mean, at least I thought I'd been tortured. I didn't understand what was happening. I grew completely distrustful of what would be the medical health system in the United States. But then I just ended up going right back to school, and it was like out of the frying pan into the fire, right into some really competitive academic work. And yeah, it made me suspicious of psychiatry. It made me suspicious of basically anything going forward.
So you went back to the university. Can you talk a little bit more about how that went? And
Sure. I ended up back in Latin class, which was hard, academically demanding, requiring a lot of memorization. And my friends didn't know what to do. They kind of scattered with the winds because I was too difficult to deal with. And lo and behold, I'm walking across campus one day and I see one of my mates from afar. And he's this tall, striking young man, all black clothes, black hair, striking, piercing blue eyes, a really deep voice. And he was known to me because he was the teacher's pet Latin class. And he was like light years ahead of anyone else. And with his intellect, he was just so smart. And we actually kind of butted heads quite a bit. And I ran into him and he's like, did something happen to you? Like, you're different. And do you want a dinner? And so in any case, I ended up having dinner with this guy. His name is Tim. And he after over the course of the meal, we realized that we are both taking lithium. We both have bipolar 1. He's been through treatment trauma. He's already been to the circus way before me. And so in any event, he kind of took me under his wing, and he became my first peer in my life, like really the first person ever that said, yeah, I get you. I'm going through this. I have this too. And these are the coping skills you need to get through. So he was my first ever connection to people with in the mental health world that actually understood my disease.
well, that's awesome. You found a friend. And then, so what else did you do? How are your studies going at university?
Well, I was doing well enough in school. I was dedicated to school. Don't ask me how or why ever. I was always wanting to achieve in school, and that actually really propelled me forward in a lot of ways. But what I decided next is that the best thing to do if you're bipolar and depressed and full of grief is that you just run away. So I decided that I would go to England and study abroad my junior year. So that's exactly what I did. I kind of went through a bunch of flaming hoops. I convinced my mom to let me go. And then, so the following year, I got to Leeds University in England, which is like the Pittsburgh of England. It's like a big industrial city in the north of England. And I got there and just dove in with all I could. I got deeply into school. I had a little clique of friends, learned to play squash, drank a bunch of cider, got really into it. And then, but per my tendencies, it was kind of slowing me down to take lithium. So I decided that I didn't really need to do that and didn't want to do that anymore. And so as a result, I actually snapped and had another psychotic break very similar to my first, where I thought I was in the spiritual realm. I thought I walked around my dorm. I thought I was invisible. I was wearing like really inappropriate clothing. I was like having a seance in my room. I had like candles all over my room, and people got very alarmed. It seemed quite dangerous. So, and I was just off the grid. Something was desperately wrong. So, some of the school authorities again intervened, and they took me to what's called High Rights Hospital, also known as the Menston Insane Asylum. It's like hundreds and hundreds years old, this building that had once been an asylum for people with mental illness, and it had been like a self-contained village. And I got through the door, and there was a guy named Paul, a nurse, making my bed, and I thought he was the Apostle Paul. I thought I was in heaven. So he's like, no, no, love, you're just here for rest. Like, you're in a hospital, blah, de, blah. And, it took me a while to like realize that it wasn't heaven and that this is a real place. I was still psychotically manic, which means I was like completely over the top with energy, unable to sleep, unable to eat, hyper religiosity is, of course, and hyper speech, rapid speech, and flight of ideas, and just really incomprehensible. So anyway, they brought in extra help to watch me because I'd set off the fire alarm a couple of times. I've been very disruptive. So one day, this young man appears out of nowhere, a student nurse who was there to watch me carefully. And in any event, he watched me carefully, but he also looked in my journal and read my poetry and thought it was interesting. And he thought I was special, like the special American girl. So he put his name and address in my journal, and then left and wished me a happy Christmas. And then as time went on, he came back and decided that I needed a little excitement in my life. So he took me out on a path. And we went to a pub, we went to Burger King, we went to a record store. By the time I got back, all hell had broken loose in the hospital because nobody knew where I was. And, I just disappeared off the grounds. So long story short, this evolved into something a little different. That eventually I got in touch with this nurse, and we ended up having Indian food and then going back to his apartment where he serenaded me with his blue guitar and told me that he had written a special song for me. And that was it. That sealed the deal. That was my experience in England. And fast forward about 6 months, or pardon me, a year or so, sure, a year or so of a long distance courtship. I ended up in Las Vegas with my nurse. We got married in Vegas. And whenever that was, whatever year that was, when I was 21 years old, we got married in Vegas with, to the donation, distress, just about everyone in my life.
And okay, so you're 21, you're married, you brought your nurse back home from England, and how does the married life go?
Well, it was stressful. It was the only, person I knew that was married with this husband who didn't even know how to drive, who I had to teach how to drive, and we were financially completely unprepared for life. Um, he was a passionate musician, so the first thing we did was buy him a new guitar. And he started playing in a band, and he started working at a bookstore. We ended up writing songs together. I wrote lyrics for his music, and then we started playing gigs all over town. And so we had this really fun, like, artistic collaboration and eventually we recorded a 13 song CD that we dedicated to my father. Yeah, we had a lot of little adventures, but it was also very stressful because we were young and stupid and, had differences and weren't ready to be married. And yeah, it was just, it was a challenge. It was a challenge.
And how long did you stay married, or what?
About 4 years. And eventually we ended up in this Victorian house in a really gnarly part of town. And so we had this big closet that had really hot. We'd just sit in the back thing and tell him that I couldn't be married anymore. And he'd sit on the toilet and we kind of eventually I just called it the $50 bathtub divorce because we had a pretty amicable parting and wrote a $50 check and didn't have any assets. And that was it. Went our separate ways.
As somebody has just mentioned, I've noticed as well your sound is cutting out a little bit. So I don't know what that might be on your end.
I'm so sorry. I have no idea.
Maybe- okay. Well, mostly it's okay. It's just a little bit off occasionally. Okay. Well, okay, so you're single again. You got your $50 divorce and then what? How's the single life?
Well, I ended up finding this little ad in the paper about a special house looking for a special person. And of course, I thought I was very special. And so I thought, okay, well, that's for me. I'm going to the special house because I'm a special person. So I ended up moving into what we called Casa de la Luna. It was this very palatial house in an amazing neighborhood that was owned by a woman that lived in a one-bedroom town or shack in Alaska and owned dogs. And she trained dogs for the Iditarod, very eccentric woman. And she rented out her house to 5 special women. So I was one of 5. It was me, a therapist or bereavement counselor, a psychiatrist, a nurse, and a teacher who were, basically the sorority house up on the mountaintop. And we just lived large, but at the same time, I was not stable in my bipolar. So I was continuing to have these massive episodes in between working and moonlighting as a swing dance teacher. So I was still like basically having major breakdowns like maybe one inpatient stay a month at a time every year for the next like 10 years, basically.
And were you getting any kind of treatment? Did you have a psychiatrist or
I did. I saw the psychiatrist. I called it the HMO arranged marriage because he was just this cold. I called him the reptile because he had like snakeskin shoes and he was cold and unfeeling. And when I told him I didn't want to take lithium anymore, he said, "Well, if you don't take lithium, you're going to end up living in a cardboard box on somebody's lawn." And I was like, "Okay, dude, I can't handle you." So I just kind of rejected his treatment. I wasn't open to even trying to take lithium anymore. And yeah, it was a disaster. I mean, having said that though, it was prophetic because my as things went, I ended up kind of almost going that route. But yeah, at that point, I was very resistant to treatment, and it certainly showed in my breakdowns and episodes.
so what kinds of things happened that made you finally realize, I mean, you're here today, you're obviously getting appropriate treatment and you're calm, you're incredibly stable. What happened? Like, did
Well,
people give you
I had a
things?
lot of flirtation with law enforcement. I'll say that. I was actually, I would have some episodes again. My types of manic episodes are very euphoric. They kind of pump you up. You're fearless. You have no judgment. You'll do things impulsively. So, and I was always kind of like on cloud 10, with a manic episode. So for example, I decided to go downtown once before my day job as a receptionist, and I decided just to like, um, antagonize a police officer. So I went down there and I ran into this cop with his passenger side window rolled down, and I thought, oh, I think I'll just throw my coffee cup through his window just to, like wake him up a little bit. So I threw my coffee mug at the cop, and it didn't make it in, but they were startled when the coffee cup hit their car, and they pulled me over, and these 2 cops got out, Alpha Cop and Beta Cop, and they kind of like were big and burly and scary. And so they got a couple more officers to come because they had no idea what was happening. So then I took them on a car chase through town when they offered to follow me home, and I just thought it was a little too dull. So then they captured me, cuffed me, and took me to county mental health, where the alpha cop confronted me and said, if you'd just been honest, you wouldn't have wasted my time. And I'm like, but dude, I'm crazy. Like, but I earned myself about another month in county trying to get stable for the next manic adventure.
And so at what point, like, how did things finally turn around? What?
Well, it took quite a while, and there were certainly some other negative misadventures
Well, your
before that.
brother kept you out of jail too a couple of times. So I knew a lot of
Yeah,
the police officers that were arresting her, and I was very nice. And they're like, you know what? She's okay. We're gonna take care of her,
yeah,
right?
Ike and my mother were always doing damage control. They
Right.
were always coming to my rescue. They were always picking up the pieces, and yeah, I was exhausting my family, and I ended up once I finally got out of Casa de la Luna, I ended up downsizing. I ended up having another episode in this strange apartment. And I ended up at County Mental Health with the lithium overdose when I decided that I would just, use my lithium finally to like calm me down. So once again in the inpatient ward, they finally said, "Look, sister, like we've had enough of you, and you're kind of a frequent flyer, and we're gonna take your rights away and put you on conservatorship unless you have ECT, which is electric convulsive therapy." So I actually kind of got jolted into a space where I was like, "Okay, I guess I'll have to do this ECT, otherwise they're going to take away my right to vote." So, of course, they would have taken out a lot away from me. So I just jumped through this hoop and got treatment at the hospital. But my brain was still addled. I was still very disorganized and confused, and had memory issues due to the ECT. And in the meantime, I had met a fellow patient who was essentially, little did I know, just a predator who attached himself to me and followed me home. And then eventually, with the powers of his persuasion, he decided to lure me to Mexico, to basically wanted to marry me in Mexico. And I thought, okay, well, I'm just following along. And then got lost in Mexico for, a long time, kind of off the grid. Nobody knew where I was. I left my job. I was lost in Mexico. And then this predator, eventually he was going to assault me while he was drunk, and I kind of came to. And I guess my survival skills finally kicked in, and I thought, oh my God, I have to get home. So I made my way across the border on the trolley. I had to like bum some change off of a skinhead to get enough money to get back across the border. Ended up at my apartment. There's an eviction notice on my door because I had been a smoker and started smoking, and they evicted me. So at that point, my dear mother and my brother stepped in again and basically said, okay, game over, game over. Okay, we're going to put you somewhere where you have to take medication. So I ended up in this very slimy, disgusting facility called Orangewood Manor. 45 mentally ill people, including myself, in this, community, let's say, no access to a kitchen, cockroaches in my clock, urine on the bathroom floor, dead rose bushes, abusive boyfriend eventually, the whole 9 yards. But miraculously, I started taking my lithium for the first time ever. And I finally started kind of coming to, and I finally had a revelation. I'm like, maybe I have mental illness. I think maybe I have mental illness, and that's why I'm here. And so I finally was like able to kind of clear up. And my brother and my mother kind of played hardball, and they were like, I had to get a job to get out. I didn't have any choice. I was there for the duration. So I ended up going to a little employment center nearby and got into the SDSU temporary pool, and ended up finding my way to SDSU to be a secretary. And so I'm living in squalor by night, or academia by day, squalor by night, and living this double life. but it enabled me to get my first paycheck. So, in my second paycheck, and then I was able to get an apartment of my own, like I had always wanted, and ended up in my own apartment with, freedom again and like a way to start afresh. So, that is my story of getting out in the boarding care and getting on lithium.
And so how did you find DBSA?
Oh, well, that's a good question, Amy. Thank you. Well, the other magical thing about Orangewood Manor, in addition to like getting medication, I was there and I bumped into this guy. He was flirting with with the owner's daughter. So he would show up every so often to like hit on her. And he was this random cowboy guy in a dilapidated truck, and he was a chain smoker. He'd like smoke Marlboro Reds, chain smoking. And we had some kind of random back and forth. And he looked at me and he said, there's a place for people like you. I'm like, what? It's like, there's a place for people like you. There's a place for you in La Jolla. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you belong in La Jolla. I'm like, yeah, I do belong in La Jolla, as a matter of fact. Anyway, he told me about this organization called DBSA, Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance, that had support groups at the Veterans Administration Hospital on the UCSD campus. So I was floored. I'd never heard of such a thing before. And don't ask me what inspired me, but I got myself from point A to point B to my first meeting ever at the Veterans Hospital. And at my first meeting, I met Kevin, the facilitator, is totally ordinary looking dude, looked like a therapist. And when it came to me in the introductions, just like we do in our meetings every time, it was my turn, and I detonated. I just had a total meltdown. I exploded in sobs. I started sobbing my whole sob story, told them what was going on. I was in this place and I couldn't get out, and I was, my whole life had been destroyed. I had no hope. And boom, like everyone rallied. And for the first time, I was like, wait a minute, these people get it. These people get it. And so I became basically a religious member of this group from that day on. And I was embedded in that community from that day forward. And it was the game changer in my life, the thing that I had basically needed my whole life that I finally found.
So after you found that belonging, like at what point or how and when did you realize that you could actually draw on your own lived experience to help other people?
Well, it was interesting. There was just a beautiful organic evolution once I joined DBSA San Diego. So, like maybe a year later, I started facilitating groups. I got trained and I started leading the peer meetings. And then shortly after that, there was a massive family and friends community at that group. It would draw maybe 20 to 30 family members a week. We had a large facility with a huge thriving community, but there weren't enough facilitators. So I ended up facilitating for the family and friends group, which became an absolutely powerful force in my life because a lot of those family members grew very attached to me. I was like the mascot of the group. I had maybe like 8 separate couples who were drawn to me that kind of took me under their wing, including my friend Marty Fowler, who eventually hosted my wedding at her house, and my friend Tom Bear, who was invited me to Mental Health America at one point, and these other couples that just nurtured me and helped me thrive. And then also at DBSA San Diego, I met a guy named Chuck who was with NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, and he did his Rags to Riches story, which is a program called Inner and Voice. And he came up and told his story about going from being homeless to being working as a legislative consultant in Sacramento. And that was his life. And I was like, okay, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to work for NAMI and I'm going to speak to the community and I'm going to make a difference. So after meeting Chuck, I went to NAMI and I met the executive director, Betty, when I first arrived that day. And about a month later, I was the newsletter editor of NAMI San Diego, and I started writing columns as the newsletter editor. And then I started doing public speaking, including training police officers to, like, not pick up their gun when they see someone like me, or, not put them in jail, but take them to the hospital. Um, and then also, I was so blessed with DBSA San Diego to have a mentor that I met, man named Don, who had basically said to me, I haven't had an episode in 8 years. And I was floored. I'm like, how is that even possible? But he basically nurtured me as well. And those people just they basically changed the trajectory of my life, and it became like my home, my spiritual home. And also I started maybe 5 years in, I started answering the phone for the group. They called me the community liaison. So all the incoming calls would come to me. People that were referred by the Access and Crisis line would get peer support. I was able to basically, I was the first point of contact for us going forward. So yeah, DBSA San Diego gave me exactly what I needed when I needed it.
What are some other things that have helped you to create stability aside from the work that you were doing with DBSA and other groups advocating for mental health?
Well, I mean, my story, of course, would never be complete without the story of Travis Sizer, my husband. So I met Travis on September 11th of 2002. So that's literally like 1 year after I got out of Orangewood and moved into my little apartment in South Park. So it was, as I said, it was September 11th of 2002. So it was kind of a day of mourning in the whole country. Like, everyone was bummed out. I ended up going to this little bar, Sparky's, which was the local bar. It was like Cheers of South Park. Um, everyone got out of work early and ended up sitting around drinking and crying in their beer. So there I was crying in my beer, and I looked next to me, and there's this guy doing something kind of weird that actually was a cute little thing. And it reminded me of my dad. It was something that my dad used to do. And I was like, oh. And so I gave him some cheesy pickup line, and he picked up on it, thought it was funny, and sat down and introduced himself. And I kind of profiled him. I'm like, yeah, this guy looks kind of good. Like, I kind of like this guy. And in the back of my mind, I had this questionnaire that my girlfriend had crafted for me specifically when I looked for a husband. She said, look, these are the things you really need to look for. 1, can he cook? 1, can he fix things? And 3, does he have lifelong friends? So I had that in the back of my mind. And so we got to talking, and he bought me a beer, and it was like yakety yak. And then it's like, oh, and what do you do? And he said, oh, I fix shit. And I'm like, can you cook? So he's like, yeah, last night I had some some swordfish that I made. I'm like, okay, well, we're off to the races here. And then the next question, we went outside. He showed me his Zippo lighter that was engraved. And I said, with his initials, I said, is that a gift? Did somebody give that to you? And he's like, my best friend from 2nd grade. So, cha-ching, there it was. It was the magic formula. And I guess the feeling was mutual, because we didn't separate really ever after that. We were kind of an instant thing. It was like love at first sight, and we were just locked in for forever after that.
And so that's been over 20 years. So happily ever after, everything's been great ever since, right?
Well, Travis, and he's knocking on wood over there. Travis was the game changer for me, because he's very structured. He has a lot of routine. He's quote unquote a normie, what we call a normie. He's very nurturing, loving, and he has been always like he has basically, at one point, he was working for a company that made surveillance cameras, and I called him my own surveillance camera. Like, he would watch out for me. And yeah, we've had just this delightful relationship that is like nothing. I was so blessed, to be in with my, my lifetime partner. So that was, he's been everything to me and just changed my life. I kind of got lost in the question. I forgot what was next.
Well, so that's awesome. So you're still together, and I believe Travis is here today. Wonderful. And so, have there been any other challenges with mental health in the last? It's been like 25 years.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Have
I
you
don't want to
been able
like
to
make
remain
people think that
successful
like
that
it's
time?
smooth sailing because, for example, I hit another wall that was totally unexpected. Like, motoring along, working, enjoying life, routines, meaningful work, advocacy work, the whole thing. Like things are just kind of going swimmingly. I've been on lithium for a long time. Lithium works for me. I have a reliable amount of energy most days. I don't have highs and lows the way I used to. Didn't spent forever out of the hospital. Thought I was clear. Thought I was in the clear. And then one day I woke up and I went to put on my mascara and I was like, I can't really see any out of it. What's going on? Well, anyway, it turns out overnight, for no reason, I had what's called a retinal occlusion in my eye. I had a stroke in my retina that destroyed the eyesight in my left eye. So at that point, I was like, okay, people with one eye are still allowed to drive in California, but for me, it was a no go. I was terrified on the road. Before I was blinded, even I was having kind of some shine or like some anxiety behind the wheel. Anyway, kind of lost my mojo, and this just was the nail in the coffin. So overnight, I become, blinded. And at the same time, when you have mental health challenges, if you have something as severe as I do, you kind of think you've got like your fill of problems. Like, okay, like, I've often said, like, I got out on the wrong side of the gene pool. Wait a minute, like, shit's not supposed to still happen to me, right? But anyway, I lost my car pretty much. I had to stop driving and it shrunk my sphere of influence. It destroyed my feelings of independence. I felt like my future had been completely derailed, and it felt like I didn't deserve it too. I grew quite self-piteous around it, and it made me depressed. So that was a real game changer, and I had to actually do a lot of reading. Read a really helpful book called Radical Acceptance because it was like, wait, all the therapy in the world isn't going to bring my eyeball back. So yeah, I really had to like reorient my whole thoughts about life or what I was capable of or what my future was going to hold. Basically, had to kind of like reinvent myself. And then I will say this, fast forward a few years to January of 2020, and I suffered what I would call from the apocalypse. I had a major shift in my life that had a major impact on my mental health. So I kind of skipped ahead, Amy. Do you want to ask another
No, you're good.
question? Get me back on track.
You're good. Go.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, what happened in January of 2020 is I had a meeting with my psychiatrist. I actually had a very beloved psychiatrist at that point who I was blessed to know, and she was world renowned. She was the best in her field. She did so much for me. She was also really she was really attentive, and she had my blood work in hand and said, well, look, the lithium that you've been on for 20 years has taken its toll. And right now, your kidneys are going to fail in 5 years if you don't go off of your lithium. And I'm like, what? It was so ironic. The thing that I resisted for so long that I thought was going to kill my creativity and ruin my life and make me fat. All of a sudden, that very thing was being taken away from me. And I had to change things up. And so anyway, she took me off of the lithium, and put me on this nouveau kind of, pharmaceutical magical one. And it just failed. It just didn't work. So I was at a very high pressure job at that point that I absolutely loved. It was a passion for me. I was working with women with mental health challenges in a house called the Redwood House. And I was like the matriarch of the Redwood House because these were my ladies. It was like my pay it forward project because I'd been in that boarding care, and I thought, I'm on the other side of the equation. I'm the matriarch now, and I'm going to give back to these women. I was in love with my job. I was in love with my women. I would do like yoga classes. I did Spanish classes. I cooked for them. I made like, I did a lot of stuff. Was the party planner extraordinaire. And so there I was in my most beautiful job. And then I had a major psychotic break as a result of going off on lithium. And at the same time, we had a new manager who had been a prison warden. And she took an instant distaste to me. She was very threatened, and her goal was to purge all the staff that were under the former manager, that were loyal to the former manager. Grew very political. And so lo and behold, I have this break and I have to take a few days off. And that was it. I got a nasty gram in my email saying, we're sorry, but you can't work here anymore because of our rules and this and that. And the nasty gram came on like letterhead that I had designed and like my own logo that I had designed. And it crushed me. It crushed me where I got crushed. I got annihilated. And 2 months later, COVID happened. So I had just gotten annihilated, spiritually annihilated. And it reminded me of my dad. I thought, okay, my dad died 6 months after he lost his job. I just lost my job. I'm going to die too. Like I'm next. I'm next. I have like, my days are numbered. So I plummeted into this very significant depression, and it lasted for a while. I didn't have good meds on board. It was the pandemic. I was lost, and it took me a long time to piece myself back together. Now, the bonus of this was that as the pandemic hit, our DBSA meetings went online, and I hadn't been able to visit them once I lost my car. So lo and behold, DBSA was back in my living room. And it was my connection to my community and to my people. And it was what got me through those meetings, those online meetings. And eventually I started facilitating online meetings with the grace of our dear leader, Marty Weiss, who was one of our DBSA San Diego like champions. I met Marty Weiss and he's like, okay, Wendy, I got you. I'm going to co-host for you. You're going to be the leader here. And he nurtured my leadership forever until eventually I started doing some baby step work and got kind of a routine together. And then I was very blessed through word of mouth for one of my dear friends that's here tonight. She met a woman who was looking for a peer mentor for her son who had bipolar type 1 and was living in Hillcrest, which is the neighboring neighborhood. So this young man appeared in my life, and he needed me in his life. He wanted, the day I met him, he's like, I need a body double. And I'm like, well, strangely, I didn't tell him this. So do I. So I met my mentee, and I started working with my mentee like maybe 6 hours a week, and we would text every day. And that was what reconnected me to our community too. It's like, okay, well, I was the matriarch, I lost my tribe, but now I'm back. I'm back in the tribe. And this is what is my life's work. So I started working with my mentee. And again, it was part of my whole calling in life was to work with peers and to mentor peers and to further mental health awareness and to get rid of stigma. And here I was doing it again. And it empowered me. So eventually, when things started opening back up, I thought, we couldn't go back. DBSA San Diego was forbidden from going back to that beautiful hospital, our mothership. And I couldn't get to our in-person meeting because I don't drive. So I thought, you know what? I'll just start my own meeting, I guess. I'll just start my own meeting. So I asked Marty, and he's like, yeah, I'll co-host with you. Just start your own meeting. So a couple of years back, we put it on Meetup, and boom, we had like 15 people the first day at the meeting, and there's Marty, and boom, we recreated a DBSA community here in my backyard practically. And then fast forward, Marty Weiss comes back into my life and says, look, I'm with this group called DBSA California, and we're a virtual group, and we have a need for some leadership, and we've got something going on, and we think you're a good person to try it out. So I massaged my resume a little bit. I sent it out into the ether, and boom, I get a call from Amy, who basically was like, okay, well, who are you? And this and that. And so Amy and I, from day one, kind of realized that we had a lot in common and that we're on the same page. And she confided in me, and I found out she was an exquisite dancer, and that we both were into yoga, and that we're both in academia, and that we're both, passionate about what we're doing. And boom. So then, shortly thereafter, there's like, okay, Wendy, you want to take this on? Do you want to be a leader in DBSA California? And I was a yes. So that was what, a year ago, Amy, that we started our project, about a year ago.
Exactly a year. It's been almost exactly a year.
It's been almost exactly a year.
11 months.
With Amy's help and our whole community, like, I'm just going to brag on this for a second, Amy. So Amy, when she did our research, looked at our Zoom statistics, we have the service hours that we have provided since Amy and I got together, and our board got rejuvenated. Our service hours have tripled, Amy, tripled since we started. And the offerings that we have just blossomed. We have this arts vibe that we promote, like healing through expressive arts and creative storytelling, and and then our offerings and our scope just really broadened. And I lead meetings. I lead a couple of our bread and butter support meetings. So does Amy. And our attendance has escalated. Yeah, it's been part of our life's work, and it's come true. So
yeah,
that's kind of my resurrection story. I got a second lease on life, and I was really able to reinvent myself. And part of it just has to do with who we are, and the fact that DBSA is vital to reduce loneliness and alienation, and increase understanding of people, and reduce stigma, and give people safe space. It's what we're all about.
And it's been a total blessing to have you over this last year. I'm incredibly grateful, and it's been a total blast working with you. I am
Well, likewise, Amy. Likewise.
so happy. Are there any final lessons that you want to leave us with before we open it up to questions?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I did get into too many of my terrible tales about my brushes with law enforcement. There are some terrible tales, but I do want to give a shout out to law enforcement in San Diego, because I've been so blessed to be, escorted back into the mental health system and not into the criminal justice system. Someone like me who has brushes with law enforcement, when you're, psychotic, and they think maybe you have a drug habit, or you're out of control. I got really blessed that law enforcement decided, okay, maybe she needs to just cool her heels in the hospital and not put me in jail. So I've been really lucky. I've gotten lucky, and I'm so blessed. And I'll shout out
I'm
to law
gonna
enforcement.
chime in here real quick, because
Sure, Ike.
you are totally right, because she had gone through so many incarcerations in different stages. And basically and she didn't talk about this, but I had friends in the police department, friends in the city government, and she actually started speaking to the police officers about mental illness. And she did a huge series with a lot of the police officers for a long time, and like what to look out for mental illness. And it probably saved some people's lives, hopefully. But I mean, it was really cool to see Wendy, open herself up like she's doing, you know, tonight, but doing it in front of a lot of police officers that have no clue. So that's one of the biggest takes that I got, and I'm glad it all worked out. And she's still here
Yeah, thanks,
because
Ike. Thank
I'll
you.
tell you
Yeah,
what,
Ike has been,
we didn't
he's
think
been to
she'd
the
make it this
circus with
far
me.
back 25 years ago. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Ike has been, like I said, through the circus. He went to the circus and he's still my supportive older brother. He's done his job, just like my folks. So, yeah, I just wanted to say, give a shout out to law enforcement. So, again, I plugged DBSA because we're a game changer and it changed the whole course of my life, this community. And also, I want to give a shout out to the cowboy at the boarding care because I just want to say, like, he's an example of like just a small act of kindness that he did to one person he hardly knew that changed the course of my entire life. I don't know his name. I can hardly remember what he looks like. I remember his Marlboro Reds and his pickup, but that guy changed the course of my life forever. And of course, when I met Travis, he can't change the course of my life forever. I didn't know I was going to wake up one day and meet my husband. And also I want to mention, like, we can be that person for other people in our lives. We can, maybe the small act of kindness that we do one day is going to be the game changer for somebody else. So I think we just don't always acknowledge our potential to make a difference in the world. But everyone here has the potential to make a difference in somebody else's life. And that could be what it takes for them. And that could really be all they need is for someone like you to come in and give them some help someday. So I just wanted to emphasize that. Yeah, I've been blessed my whole life with good friends that never left me. And I've been blessed with the most beautiful family. Also, a shout out to my stepdad, Lanny, who joined this family right after I met Travis. My mom and Lanny got married right after I met Travis. Also, my brother Ike met his beautiful wife, Mindy. And right around the same period of time, we all met our partners. Mike has two beautiful children, my nieces, Megan and Mallory. So I'm so blessed that our family kind of came back from the ashes and came together, and we kind of resurrected our family out of this very dark tragedy. That we still deal with I still deal with PTSD from my dad's death, like, all the time, but the grief never goes away. But yeah, I'm just so proud of our family that we've been able to reconfigure ourselves and have good lives together. I also want to make one last comment. So I also want to say this, and I'm honoring one of my friends who basically doesn't want me to just give you the Hollywood ending and to say, like, oh yeah, okay, I'm totally fine, like everything's great, blah blah blah. Because bipolar 1 never goes away. It's a chronic illness. You can't cure it. It does not go away. And in my post lithium years, it has been harder and harder to manage, like with new medicines and not the right stuff, and try again. And, symptoms that you can't really handle sometimes. And I call it like happiness suspicion too. You get happy and you get suspicious that you're going to get manic. Like, where, joy can be like kind of just like, oh, I'm joyful. Oh, what's wrong? You have that going on. You have to be militant about managing your mental health every single day. Like, you wake up, you take the pills, you like go, okay, here we go again. It doesn't go away. And as much holistic stuff as you can do, you still need to be in treatment. You can't just, forget about it. So yeah, it's still a thing. No matter what you do, it's still a thing. And we all have to be there for each other because it gets really hard sometimes. So I love this community. I appreciate all of you so much. And I just can't thank you enough for giving me this the honor of your company. And it's been such a privilege to be able to share my story. And yeah, just I can't thank you all enough. You're beautiful.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
Zoom applause. I want to hand over the screen to Caroline.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all thank you, Wendy. Thank you for Amy for your story. I was just, my jaw was on the floor. So thank you so much for your vulnerability and whatnot. I do have this slide here that Wendy prepared just to shout out to everybody who helped her and everything. And, I can say from personal experience, Wendy has helped me a lot too. So thank you for doing what you do, Wendy. We are going to move into the Q&A. I'm going to turn off the recording to protect people's personal information. However, if you are watching the recording of this later, just know that you can subscribe to our YouTube to see our other events. We have had a few Third Thursday events so far. And if you have a little bit of extra money you want to kick our way, we do accept donations. We are a peer run organization. So you can find all that information on our website as well. With that, I'm going to stop sharing and stop the recording.